Packlash is a 2 to 5 minute card game where two players compete to fulfill the objective of their unique 15 card deck. A player wins by achieving the objective listed on their starred item, which means both players will have different ways to win throughout play. Not only will each player try to reach their individual objective, but players will try to disrupt each other from winning. The Packlash pack includes 4 decks, each with 15 cards. Each deck has a different strategy and theme attached to it, making Packlash a game where you have unique situations with each deck you play and play against. Before we explain setup and gameplay, we will explain zones, card types, and the core 4 decks. There are 4 zones in the core Packlash rules. Each player has all 4 zones independent from one another. The hand, where cards from the deck are drawn into and then played from, similar to most card games. The deck, a group of cards that are face down and shuffled that the player draws from. Play, the area of the table where items are placed until they are destroyed. And discard, a face-up stack of cards that actions get placed into once they are played and items are sent to once they are destroyed. Each deck is comprised of 2 different card types, action-reaction cards and items. First is the action-reaction card. Action-reaction cards have one-time effects that either get you closer to fulfilling your objective or prevent your opponent from fulfilling theirs. When you successfully play an action or reaction, immediately do what the card instructs and then put the card into the discard zone. The action part of a card can only be played on your turn during play, while reactions can only be played on your opponent's turn. If a player chooses to react to a card that is being played, the reaction takes effect before the action or item card goes into play. There are specific types of action-reaction cards to be aware of. If a card says destroy on it, it moves any one item to discard. If the react portion of the card says protect, think of it like a shield. It blocks the opponent from carrying out their destroy, and in return, both cards go into the discard zone. Protect cards only last 1 turn, so be prepared for the opponent to try and act again. Another type of reaction is the negate card. These are powerful cards because it completely removes whatever action or item the opponent was trying to play. Both cards immediately go into the discard zone. Next are items. Items are cards that are put into play from hand and stay in play until they are destroyed. The text on items only take effect when they are in play. Starred items appear in every deck and denote how your deck wins. If you fulfill the starred item's objective before your opponent fulfills theirs, you win Packlash. Some items, like the book and epitaph, are not related to winning the game like the starred items are. Items that aren't starred have game-changing effects that stick around as long as they remain in play. These effects cannot be reacted to and happen either when a condition is met or when the player uses them. Packlash is different from other card games because how a player wins depends on the deck that they are using. This means neither player can win in the same way. For example, if we take a look at the relic deck, the starred item says that 3 relic items need to be in play in order for the player to win. If we take a look at the gear deck, a player must have a gear item in their hand, in play, and in their discard zone. It's important to keep in mind your deck's objective and your opponent's deck's objective. You can only win during the check phase and if the player's starred item is in the play zone. Setting up Packlash is quite simple. First, make sure the decks are separated. The 2 players now choose who goes first. There are many ways to do this. You could roll dice and see who gets the highest value, or maybe flip a coin. Once a player order has been decided, the player going first will choose which deck they want. Remember that each deck plays differently, so take a moment to look over objectives before choosing. Once the first player has made their decision, the second player may choose a different deck. After decks are chosen, each player must shuffle their 15 cards. After shuffling, each player must put their deck face down on the table. The player who is going first will draw 3 cards into their hand, and the second player will draw 4 cards. Each turn of Packlash consists of 3 phases: play, check, and draw. Players will take turns doing these 3 phases. During play, each player can play the cards in their hand. During check, both players check to see if they've met their deck's objective. During draw, the player whose turn it is will draw cards until they have 3 in hand. When both players have taken their turn, that is considered 1 round of Packlash. To simplify this explanation, The player whose turn it is will be referred to as player 1, and the player who is reacting will be referred to as player 2. Phase 1, play. On player 1's turn, they may play up to 2 cards or as little as 0 cards. Player 1 can play any cards in their hand, but may only play 1 item per turn. Unlike other card games, player 2 can play a card during player 1's turn. These are what the reaction portion of the action-reaction cards are for. Player 2 is allowed to react to an action player 1 takes, or an item that player 1 places in play. For example, player 1 plays an action here. Player 2 can react to that by using their negate card. Now, both cards are put into the discard pile. It is not required for a player to use a reaction, but if they do, they can only react once per round. Phase 2, check. After player 1 has completed their play phase, they check to see if they've met the deck's objective. In order to win, the player must meet the deck's objective and have their starred item in play. For example, because player 1 is playing the relic deck, if they had 3 items in play, they win. If player 1 has not fulfilled their deck's objective on their turn, but player 2 has, player 2 wins. There aren't any ties in Packlash, so if both players meet their deck's objective on the same turn, the player whose turn it is automatically wins. Phase 3, draw. If no player has fulfilled their deck's objective, we now go to the draw phase. If player 1 has less than 3 cards in their hand, they will draw cards into their hand until they have 3. After phase 3, player 2, who was reacting, will take their turn. Now all 3 phases repeat. Play, check, draw. This loop happens until a player wins the game. Those are the basics of Packlash. Join our Discord and follow us on Instagram and Twitter. By joining our Discord, you can post any questions in the Judge Rulings text channel. Thanks for learning, and make sure to check out the expansion packs to spice up your game.